All right, welcome everyone. This is the Apporto faculty training webinar. On the screen, I'm displaying our intended agenda for today. This is a series of webinars that I run typically monthly. We do take a pause in the end of the winter semester because most folks are quite busy with their quarters and semesters, so we understand how that goes. Both myself and Rudy used to work at a university, so we know all the ins and outs and how busy it gets. Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll start this off. My name is Max Lushchan. I'm the Director of Customer Success and Support here at Apporto. And on the call, I have Rudy Marin, who's another one of our Customer Success Managers. And the two of us generally work closely with faculty and systems admins to go ahead and get the Apporto service running for the university or college and so forth. So in this webinar today, we're going to discuss some of the basics of the service and what we do. And we'll kind of highlight how the platform works, some of the features that you have access to, and we'll also demonstrate a number of things there. So first, we'll talk about how to log into the environment. Each and every one of you will probably already have your own instance for the organization that you are affiliated with. So I'll kind of explain how that works a little bit. We'll talk about the App Store access. We'll discuss, I think, what's really important, which is file handling and file recovery for the students. I'll also demonstrate the virtual classroom and the presenter mode feature, and I'll discuss a little bit about learning management systems and how Apporto can integrate with some of the big, well-known LMSs like Canvas and Blackboard and so forth. And also I'll talk about, if we have time, the Cyberlab possibilities. It's something that we're really excited about here. And then at the very end, we'll have a more in-depth Q&A session. But as I go along, you are free to ask questions, raise your hand, pause me, interrupt me. Rudy will kind of be helping me out with that. He'll keep an eye on the chat room and things like that. And it would actually be ideal if questions are needing to be answered to ask them as I go along. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start this off now. Okay, so a couple of things I want to point out. Let me go ahead and resume the screen share there. I want to talk a little bit about the Help Center. So the Help Center is a resource that we have available to everybody. So before I go into the logging in process and things like that, I do want to show our Help Center here. So for everyone involved, if you have a instance page to log into with your current university or college, you will already have this help menu at the top. Rudy will go ahead and put in the chat, or he's already done that. So yeah, the Help Center is there, and everything I'll cover today is documented there in the Help Center. I'm going to go ahead and click here and go to the user guide. That's going to take us there. And so what we see here is we have kind of a split, but the most important one is here, Help Center for Education. And the way that this is broken down is we have the video tutorials that are split for students and then faculty. And then below that is a user guide, and that's a more in-depth kind of documentation for students. So all of the information about how the environment works, what they need to get started, some of the features that we have and things like that, that's all documented here. And then the user guide below that is more geared for you folks, and this is for the faculty. Similar approach, what you need to get started, etc. But also we cover some of the other things like using the virtual classroom feature, the presenter mode, and such. So that's what we have there. So yeah, we have that there in the chat. So take a look at that, bookmark it. But you'll also see that you have access to it in your app stores already. So that's over here in the user guide. So that's how you can access that part there. Okay, so let me get to just a standard login page here. Okay, So in most cases, you will have your university, your college, something like the name of the school.apporto.com. And that will bring you to this login page. Now, this can work on any browser, any HTML5 capable browser. So whether it's Firefox, Chrome, Edge, or Opera, or anything else, Safari, all of those browsers do work. You could also do this on an iPad, a Chromebook, Linux operating system, Windows OS, whatever you've got, it'll work there. So to log in most cases with the majority of our partners, we have single sign-on integrated. So you typically won't really see this field here where you have to type stuff in. It's more like you click a login button and it just redirects to your familiar single sign-on process, whether that's Okta or Shibboleth or whatever folks are using, Azure, et cetera. So it's a process that you should be familiar with. So what I'm going to do here initially is kind of go over the environment from a student perspective, and then I'll talk about, and I'll kind of engage on the faculty side, and you can see what that looks like. Okay, so after we log in, what a student will see, or faculty, is the App Store. So that's what we have here on the left-hand side. You could see that if I click that button there, that's going to slide out that area there and show us what we have. So the first and most important part here is the App Store. And what it is essentially a collection of environments that faculty and staff and students will have access to based on their group membership. Now that's determined by your systems administrators or folks who are kind of maintaining the environment on the IT side of things. Generally, what we have here is a collection of desktops, applications, and so forth that a student or faculty will have access to based on their group membership. Now, we could also access this from learning management systems if we've performed that integration. I'll cover that a little bit later. So yeah, what we have here is the collection of environments. That's the App Store. Sometimes folks will drop an announcement here. So you may see that. And faculty can also create those if they have the permission to do that with the sysadmin or systems administrator that's responsible for the Apporto environment. A couple of options that we have in these applications. Now, these could be single apps. They could be Linux virtual machines. They could be Windows machines or even virtual Mac machines. So whatever you've got configured there with the organization you're affiliated with. So we have two options here. Some folks like to describe the environment. Here we didn't do that, but your sysadmin might provide some more information there for that environment, what applications might be available in this desktop. If we click the little drop-down arrow, you could see that you can launch the environment in multi-monitor mode. So we can support 3 monitors, and what that does is it launches the environment, and you'll see an A/B button at the top of the Apporto toolbar, which I'll show in a second. And from there, you could launch additional tabs that will act as separate monitors, and then you could take those tabs and move them to your monitors that you have, and now you've got kind of like a multi-monitor mode. So to launch the environment, we simply click on Launch here. What that's going to do is open up a separate tab and open up the tab and start logging us into the environment. So initially there you saw that the browser is asking if we want to allow this environment to communicate with our clipboard. So I always click allow for that, because if I want to be able to copy paste things from my physical machine to the virtual computer, allowing that would be how that would work. So it's important to allow the clipboard access if you want to be able to support copy and paste for your session here. So we'll see in a second here a couple of things. I'm going to talk about these buttons here at the top. This is what we call the Apporto toolbar, and this covers a lot of features here. As faculty, you'll see additional buttons and other features there as well. Okay, so the first button here is full screen mode. This one's pretty important. If we click on this, it's going to full screen the environment. I'll resize my screen share a little bit. So you could see that now it's a little bit larger. This is important because this becomes pixel for pixel with your physical monitor to the virtual machine. So you've got a full screen view. And in full screen mode, we can capture more of the sophisticated keyboard presses and keyboard shortcuts. So for example, if you're working with some engineering applications, and if you have multiple keys that you have to press to achieve some kind of command, maybe Control Shift, 6 or something like that, those advanced keyboard combinations will get captured in full screen mode. So things like Alt Tab or so forth. So stuff like that will pass through. And of course, if you're using a Mac to connect to a virtual Windows machine, you have to keep in mind that the keyboard is a little bit different. So if you want to be able to copy and paste things, instead of on Windows, it's Control C, Control V, and on a Mac keyboard, it's Command C and Command V. So you have to keep that in mind, that to pass that command over into the Windows virtual machine, you would have to hit, I think, Option, or maybe one of those keys on the Mac keyboard. And that is something that we do document there as well in the Help Center. Okay, to escape out of full screen mode, you can click on this X that flies out, or you can click on the full screen button again, and that will kind of resize things and bring you back to the window mode. Okay, so moving along, we've got a couple other buttons here. I do want to point out that up here at the top right, we still have access to that Help Center. So we're kind of giving the opportunity to folks to be able to access the Help Center from pretty much anywhere in the portal. Okay, so the next button here is File Upload and then File Download. Now, all of these options can be enabled or disabled per class or per group. So that is something I'll show you in a little bit. So to upload a file, you can click this button, and that's going to bring up your file explorer like so. Or you can take a file and actually drag and drop it into the monitor. So I'm going to see if I can pull up something here on my side. So I've got two monitors here, and one of the things I could do is I could just go ahead and drag that. So I just drag the file over into the desktop here, and we'll give it a second. It should upload to the desktop. So just dragging stuff over into the window will copy things into the desktop. Now, it's not going to move it into a folder that you might have had open. So if I open this folder and then drag a file into that environment, it's still going to automatically upload to the desktop. So the default location for uploading files is the desktop here. Okay, one of the things that I think people are going to ask is, how is file storage and all of that type of stuff handled here? And the truth is, we're containerizing profiles and we're redirecting some of that. So we have a persistent experience where we take the desktop folder, documents, and desktop documents and downloads. So those three folders for a user are persistent. So that means that if I leave this file here and not use the system for a month, come back next month, log in again, I'll still have that file present there on the desktop. Same goes if I place that file somewhere else, like documents or downloads. We also have another drive called the U drive, and the U drive is a symbolic link back to the documents area. It's a lot easier to communicate with students and say, hey, save everything to the U drive. The reason why we created this drive is to support some legacy applications that might not like the way that we're kind of persisting and redirecting things in our environment. So some apps will kind of complain and give you an error saying that it can't find a network path or something like that. So we create the U drive, but it's also just makes it simple. Just save stuff to the U drive. Students understand that. So we recommend instructing students to use the U drive. Okay, and file download will allow you to navigate between these three redirected and persistent areas. So desktop, documents, downloads, as I mentioned, these are areas that are persistent to all users. And those files and that data will remain until the Apporto administrator removes that user from the portal. So I don't think anyone has to worry about that. Yep, and then just to get into these environments, into these folders, you could just double click. So this allows you to go ahead and find something there, click download. That's going to download that file to whatever location you've configured for your web browsers. Okay, so that's going to be in the download folder there. Okay. So moving along here. So yeah, that's upload and download. I'll talk a little bit about what the snapshot button does here. Another feature that we have is screen sharing. So this gives the ability to students to share their screens with anybody who gets this link here. So if I click on copy link, that's going to copy a special one-time use link into my clipboard, and then I can take that and send that to somebody, right? I could send it to multiple people as well. So if I wanted to send that to like 3 people in view-only mode, those folks who click that will be able to watch what I'm doing on my screen. Now that could be like a TA, or maybe directly to faculty, or maybe a peer. So that's kind of the idea there. View and draw creates a link that pretty much takes a snapshot of what the student is currently seeing, and then both parties are able to annotate on that screen. And then full control is exactly what you might think it is. It's anybody who's clicking that link will be able to control your environment. Now, all of these links do expire. It's not something that somebody could bookmark and be able to access those environments or these screen shares at any time. If you start a screen share, you can stop it by clicking the same button. Or if the student logs off, whether they log off this way, or if they close the tab, whichever way they log off, it'll stop that screen share and those links will expire right away. So logging off too is important here. I think it's important to mention that you could log off through the start menu, or if the student closes the browser tab or just the browser, those are all types of ways that we're receiving that the intent is to log out. So that will automate that process of logging the user out. They don't have to do it through the start menu, but yeah, they can just close the tab and that's going to log them out of the system there. Okay, we also have a messenger. So this could be configured for a number of things, but ultimately a chat messenger is a way that it's set up by group based. So if you're launching this environment from Canvas, or if you're launching the environment from some kind of LMS, or there's kind of like a class that's been created, this is how students will be able to see each other. We could also see who's faculty and who isn't. So that's kind of the idea there. You could also directly chat with folks. So you could do something like that. From here, within the message, you could also initiate, a student can initiate a screen share. So they could do something like this. And if they want to enable full control, they could do that. The receiving party will get a pop-up asking them, if they want to accept this screen share. And we also support a direct voice call as well. So you can use your microphone and call somebody. So you can have a direct kind of communication there. You can also put yourself on Do Not Disturb, or you can mark yourself as away, things like that. So you can go ahead and, if you do close that, that kind of makes it disappear, but you could always bring that back up by clicking this button here. And then lastly, we have kind of like an activity monitor. This really just kind of grabs analytics on the current session of that user in terms of how active, how much time they're spending. And then we also have the last piece here. It's to pretty much disable audio output from this virtual machine. So if I've got a tab that's, if I'm using the virtual browser and there's maybe YouTube or something like that, you can try to mute it from here, but you could also just mute it this way. So it's an easy toggle there. And then to the right, we've got kind of like a cell phone type of signal meter here. This is basically just showing us what that current student or user, what latency they might have, what bandwidth utilization they might have. So this is a really low bandwidth utilizing service. You could see that as I manipulate things, that usage is quite low. So we're only updating pixels that actually need to change. So that's kind of what that is. And then this is that same activity monitor I talked about earlier. And then up here, we have a couple of options. So if, for example, you're using a high resolution screen, maybe a 4K monitor or something like that, and things are appearing pretty small, our default option is to match the local display in terms of scaling. So that means that if your system display scaling is set to 250% or something like that, we'll match it. And so you can adjust these if you want to maybe make things a little bit bigger or smaller and so forth. So you've got that option there. And then we also do have a way to kind of adjust the resolution a little bit. So for those who are maybe using like a hotspot to connect to this environment, that's typically kind of like a less stable connection or something along those lines. You can click the low resolution option here, and that's going to result in a quicker response overall for how things are updated on the screen. All right, and then we've got the toggle here to enable the microphone. That's if you do want to have those voice conversations through the chat messenger. And of course, you could also toggle the clipboard prompt again in order to be able to copy and paste. Okay, so that kind of covers a little bit of those basics there.
Max, I just wanted to point out that the user persistent profile is actually throughout all the environments. So if your university has Linux or a Mac environment, that user's profile will be persistent throughout. So if they save something on their Windows desktop, they will see it on their Mac desktop as well.
Yeah, that's correct. So the persistence of the profiles flow throughout the whole ecosystem there. So if we've got, a Mac desktop here, Linux desktop, and things like that. So those files are kind of present all at the same time everywhere. Yeah, that's a good point there. Okay. One thing I wanted to show too is that students they do have access to be able to kind of restore files. So if somebody says that, so we do have this, recycle bin, but sometimes students can delete things permanently. One of the options that everybody has is the ability to restore files. So if I click on this folder that I created on the desktop, right, let's go in here and let's just delete some of the files that I left. If I right click on that folder on my desktop and click on properties, I've got this section here called previous versions. And previous versions are pretty much hourly backups, and these can go far, far back. It just depends on kind of the configuration. But generally, we support about, I think, 3 to 5 days worth of backups here. So these are hourly backups that are always available. And what students can do is they can find, instead of restoring the whole folder, they could kind of come in here and say, you know what, I remember I made some changes to this folder like last week or something like that, or this week or a couple of days ago and so forth. And they could just open up a version of that folder. And from there, they can go ahead and find what they were missing or what they might have deleted and just copy it over. So that's going to go ahead and put that back. So they do have access to this type of approach. Now, they could do the same thing with just the parent folder. So for example, I can right click on desktop and do the same thing. I could see versions of the desktop there. Another way that they could do that is they could do the same thing for downloads. They could do the same thing for documents or any subfolders within. So essentially, that's how it works. It's just any parent folder that you might want to access or that you might need to get into, you can go ahead and do so. Okay, so I think that's really important and it's really helpful. Of course, if somehow they bypass the recycle bin, they could restore. Right now, that's only available on the Windows side. We don't have that type of feature specifically for Mac or for Linux. But on the Windows side, they do have access to this continuous backup system. One thing I wanted to point out too is that if users did want to connect some of their cloud drives, they could do that. So for example, we have this proprietary tool called Apporto Cloud Mounter, and the Apporto Cloud Mounter will allow folks to mount any of these drives here, or all 4. So if you've got a Box shop there or OneDrive or Google Drive, you can go ahead and click this button. What that's going to do is it's going to bring this up. If you leave this checkbox checked, it's going to reconnect and mount that cloud drive every single time you log in. If you want to just do it for the one session, you can go ahead and click connect now, and that's going to open up the browser, and you can log in with your Google Drive account and then set that up. And what that does is it essentially mounts your Google Drive as a drive letter here. So you'll see the G drive, and then from there you can directly access your cloud drive. So that's a good option there. You could also do that through the web browser as well. So if you want to directly access your cloud drives through the browser, you could just open up the virtual cloud browser and go to onedrive.com or drive.google.com and so forth. and you can log into those drives that way, and then you have the same access as well. So it's either way works. Cloud Manager is a pretty unique tool there to be able to do that. All right. I mentioned this button here for snapshots. So in short, what this really is a way for a student to take a full backup of all of their files. So all the project files that exist, maybe on the desktop or documents, anywhere else that they have files and things saved, this will create a restore point. So it's a little bit different in the sense that, it's not like the backups that I showed you a minute ago, but it basically takes a snapshot of everything that they've saved and gives them that restore point. It's a useful tool in case that they're going to be working with a project that's going to have multiple directories involved, multiple folders and things like that. If they just want to, take a little safety snapshot there to give them a starting point, they can go ahead and click that button. All users are allowed up to 2 snapshots here, so they show up as dates when you've captured them. Okay. Were you going to say something, Rudy?
Yep. I was just going to say, did we review the shared folders?
Yes, great one. Okay, yeah, so shared folders are really neat. Basically what these are folders that are shared amongst or among pretty much a class. So let's say that I'm a member of a class. In this case, I'm a member of the Math 101 class. We can create a shared folder where faculty can upload maybe, some kind of project, syllabus, project files, etc. And we can configure this environment or this folder such that faculty have full control, like full permissions. They can write files, create subfolders, things like that. And students can have read-only access. So they can execute or copy files from that location, but not be able to modify them. So, or we can open it up so that they can modify them. So it's really up to you folks what you want to do, but this is a neat area that is group-based. So if a student is a member of like 3 classes and the Apporto admin has enabled the shared folder feature for those 3 classes, then they'll see all of their shared folders for each class that they are taking. So this is a neat way to be able to share files or provide syllabus files and things like that, or project files for your students. So this is very easy to set up, easy to work with in our environment. And same thing goes here too. There are restore points as well that you can take advantage here. So this is a really useful feature there. Okay, I'm going to jump over to the faculty side. So let me go ahead and let me spin up another browser here. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of a split screen experience here. So the right-hand side is my faculty account that I've logged in with. So I'm going to go ahead and expand that for a second. And you can see here that we have a couple of extra features. So if we click that, we'll see that I have access to the users list. So as faculty, you're able to see some of your students. If you need to manually add a student to your class, you could do things like that. So there's a number of features there. But one thing I wanted to point out is that you can have access to the feature screen. And here, based on the permissions that you have set by your administrator, you're able to enable or disable some of these options. So for example, if you're teaching, let's say 3 classes, but for one of them, you don't want students to be able to use the messenger, so you don't want them to chat, you don't want them to be able to use screen sharing, or maybe you don't want them to be able to download or upload files or whatever the case is. These are all features that could be enabled and disabled per each class that you are teaching. So you do have that option as well. There's a calendar feature that allows you to kind of plan your class to say, we want to make sure we're going to have 100 students logging in all at once. I'm teaching the Windows desktop class or something like that. You can go ahead and schedule that class here, and that's going to make sure that the system is set to kind of power everything on, so to speak, and get everyone logged in all at once, nice and fast. Generally, as people log in, things kind of spin up and spin down. There's magical cloud things that happen, but generally the system is able to handle that. But if you do have a huge volume of students that are going to be instructed to log in all at once, scheduling the environment maybe your class is not a terrible idea, but that can help. And then lastly, we have the faculty dashboard. And I'll cover this really briefly, but in short, it essentially gives you a view of your environment, how active some students might be. I think we don't have too much data in here, but yeah, so it kind of gives you an idea of how much time students are spending, how active they're being, so you kind of have a little bit of a visual view of your class, and maybe if she shares not performing well, we could see that he's got very low activity. I don't know, something like that. So you can kind of see that. You can also plot your users or your students against the percentile graphs as well. So you could do something like that. So those are just some of the options there. Okay, let me go ahead and move this back over, and I'll go ahead and I'll launch this environment as a faculty. So on the left-hand side, I'm a student. On the right-hand side, I'm faculty. And I want to show you just some of the features that we have here. So we have the same set of tools at the top here, with the exception of two new buttons here now. So we've got the virtual classroom button, and then we've got presenter mode. So I'll talk about both of these once my session gets going here. So the virtual classroom is a way for you to be able to view what your students are doing. The way it's set up is if we have a class that you're teaching, you can click on this button. It's going to open up a tab. And now we could see on the left-hand side, the student received this message saying that the desktop is being shared with faculty in view-only mode. So now we can see this class. And you can organize the view a little bit. So you could set it up such that it shows less thumbnails or more thumbnails. Or if you just put it on auto, you'll kind of see them like so. So we can have this view of the students and what they're doing. The little thumbnails update every few seconds or so. But if you want to kind of see a more real-time view of what's going on, you can go ahead and just click on that screen, and it will expand it a little bit, and then you'll see a more of a real-time view of what's happening there. So it's neat because you could see the cursor of the student and things like that. And if you want to take control of that screen, you could go ahead and do that here. So you can go ahead and click on request remote control. That's going to notify you that we're waiting for the student's approval. The student gets this pop-up where they can decline or accept your remote control request. If the student accepts that, then you'll go ahead and have full control over that environment. And then the student will be able to see your cursor and vice versa. So as the faculty, if I want to move this window, I can just go ahead and do that. And you could see that the student saw that the cursor said faculty. So we could see whose actions are whose. That's pretty neat. And then just to get out of this view, you can go ahead and click that, and that resets that back. Now, if a student needed help, for example, if they got stuck, the student did get a new button here at the top. So we've got the raise hand button there. So if I click that, you get to see that there's a red outline. So you also see that a student raised their hand. So you've got this interaction here. You can click on the little hand print there, and that kind of notifies the student that the faculty has acknowledged your hand raise. You could see this prompt that the student got, letting them know that the faculty did see and they acknowledged it. So they do know that they might need some help there. So it's a neat way for you to watch your class, see what they're doing, make sure that they're following correctly and things like that. Another feature too is that you do have the chat messenger available. So here the student sees that this is a faculty, and same thing, you can go ahead and establish a one-on-one communication there. So you could see that there. And same approach, you could initiate a direct screen sharing or a direct voice conversation with your students as well. Okay, and then the other option that you have is the ability to present your screen to the students. So maybe you want the students to watch what you're doing and you want to follow along. Thanks, Rudy. Okay, so if I click this button, presenter mode, this gives you the option to, if you're teaching more than one class, you can select which class you want to present your virtual desktop to. If you check this box, that's going to allow you to broadcast your voice for your presentation. So if I leave that and hit share screen, that'll use my microphone, and then all of my students will be able to hear my presentation. So if I click on share screen, what the students will see is a pop-up that'll ask how they want to view that screen share, that presentation that the faculty is trying to present. So you've got two options here. If the students have multiple monitors, they can go ahead and click new tab. That's going to open up a new tab window, and then in that tab, they'll be able to see the presentation of the faculty. If they don't have more than one monitor, they can just click in page, and that will kind of give them a picture-in-picture type of view. So we could see that here. And they can move this window around. So if I'll go ahead and click on my faculty screen, start modifying some things here. So you could see it's a real-time presentation of that, of that desktop there. And if it's too small, they can go ahead and expand it, right? They can make it larger so they could see a little bit better what they're doing. If they feel like this is in the way and they can't shrink it enough to kind of hide it, there's a little minimize button there, so they could tuck it away, and that kind of puts it down here at the bottom right corner. They could click on that again to bring it up again. So there's a lot of options for that. And then if they do close it, there's a little X there. They can bring that presentation back up just by clicking this button here on the student side. So they can bring it back and they can resume that presentation. Yeah, so you could see it's a real-time presentation. They could see directly what's going on there. So I think it's a pretty neat feature to be able to present to your students what you're doing so they can follow along your coursework. It's a neat feature there. Okay, so yeah, that's presenter mode in virtual classroom, where we think it's a really good tool, and hopefully some of you folks take interest in that and want to go ahead and use that. Okay, so I can go ahead and close that and pause for a second. Okay, so we covered a couple of things today. We covered the logging in process. We talked about what's there available in the App Store. We talked about file handling, file recovery, the virtual classroom, and the presenter mode. Let me talk a little bit about the learning management system. So I'm going to demonstrate just Canvas here. This is one of our test instances that we have, but we do support LMS integration. So we can integrate with Canvas, Blackboard, D2L, Desire to Learn, Brightspace, Moodle, Skill Jar, Schoology, Sakai. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, but we can integrate with all of those. Of course, the most popular one right now seems to be Canvas, so I'm going to show that one. So what I'm showing here is I'm logged into my dashboard as a student. I have access to one class here. It's the engineering class. I'll go ahead and click on that. And we can see that in this class that I'm enrolled in, I have some creatively titled homework assignments. And I've got some modules available to me for this class, like the Windows Desktop or the App Store. So what this will do for us is I can go ahead and click on the virtual desktop button here. That's going to open up another tab and log me into the virtual desktop directly. And so with Canvas, what's neat is, students authenticate to Canvas and they don't have to go to that login page that I showed you before where they have to put in their credentials and things like that. It's just going to directly log them into their instance there. So it's going to go ahead, open up the tab, get them into the virtual desktop. Go ahead and close some of my other tabs there. And so what this will do is we'll directly get them in there. You could also, we could also integrate whichever applications that are relevant to that course. So for example, if your organization has individual apps in the App Store, like here, we have Excel, or maybe SolidWorks or other types of desktops, we could plug those into your course module or your course shell, or maybe you want to present the App Store. So it's just a neat, way to be able to give them these the access to the resources that they should have access to directly into their LMS. Okay, so the other option that we have here, and this, I believe this is supported right now with Blackboard and Canvas only, is the assignment return. So I can go ahead and click this button, and through that integration, we can see that I have, in the class I'm taking, 4 homework assignments that I can submit. And what this will do is you can select one of the homework assignments, and then from there you can navigate to a file that you might want to upload to back to Canvas. Now, of course, you could open up the virtual browser there, go to your LMS instance, and then log in, and then upload the file directly from the virtual machine through the browser. But you could also just do it this way. So that'll go ahead and upload that file back to Canvas for us. So I think that's homework number 2, and that'll show up here. You can see that that was submitted. I'm in California, so I'm Pacific time, so that's 10:40 right now. So yeah, that's the LMS integration. We think it's pretty neat. It's convenient. It just makes it easier to access these environments directly. Okay, I'll pause there for a second to see if anybody has any questions on any of this. All right. Yeah, if you do have any questions, I think you can just drop those directly into the chat, and we'll be happy to answer some of that. Okay. Another thing that we support, and this is a little bit more on the side of cybersecurity or IT or computer science and things like that, is the ability to support nested virtualization. So we can support kind of like labs where students can be isolated. They could do vulnerability attacks, or network type of classes, or computer science type of classes where they have to perform testing and things like that. Those are labs that we can also support and build. So I'll go ahead and I'll demonstrate that in a second. And yeah, the other thing too is that we pretty much support any type of application in these virtual environments. So on the Windows side, we support GPU enhanced applications, so things like AutoCAD, things like engineering apps like SolidWorks or MicroStation, and those types of heavy duty applications, ArcGIS. These are all supported types of heavy GPU based applications as well. And of course, we support non-GPU applications. So there's a lot of capability with a cloud environment like this. And being that it runs in the browser makes it device agnostic, right? So we've got students using Chromebooks. We've got students using iPads that were provided either by the university or it's just their own BYOD. They brought their own device. So it does make it more of a device agnostic type of solution that gives access to university applications anytime, anywhere. So the service is available 24/7, and it does not require any type of VPN access or anything like that. It's just that landing page to log in and just a web browser, and that's all they need. And being that it's streamed through the web browser, it just means that the machine or the computer that student is using does not have to be super powerful, right? It could be like I said, a Chromebook, so really lightweight.
Yep. I've had a partner run the environment from a phone, a Linux environment, and they were running commands to control robots, and they did that all from their phones.
Okay, what I'm launching here right now is what's called the modular Cyberlab. In a nutshell, what this is, it's a environment that's running in our cloud, and it supports nested virtualization. So this is kind of more geared towards those folks in computer science or cybersecurity types of classes. Oops, I think I kicked myself off there. So yeah, what this will be is an environment that supports all types of virtual machines that will act as containers. So we're using Docker and containerization in the background and that will kind of allow students to be able to see a topology view of those labs. So what it does on the back end is use operating system containers and KVM functionality as a hypervisor to allow students to have multiple virtual machines running all within the same browser window. And those will act as a way to, you have multiple endpoints, and they'll be able to mount attacks or do scanning of sorts. So there's a number of types of features there. It just depends on how the computer science department or the cybersecurity department are running those types of classes. Okay, are there any questions so far? Kind of covered a lot of topics there, but hopefully folks have some questions.
Also wanted to point out that we do offer these training sessions for your environment. So if you believe the other faculty will benefit from training, we can actually set up a training session with your personal university's environment, and we can do the whole thing, what we just did here. And then it's just a little bit more personalized, so we can review all the applications that you actually have installed in, your environment.
Yeah, that's right. So these personalized training sessions can definitely be scheduled, with us. So those are really fun to do. We use your actual instance that you have with your applications for a more, detailed type of deep dive. So, oh yeah, Shannon asked a really good question, actually. So yes, it's kind of a different environment that we have to build. So with the lockdown browser, the way that works is they have a default profile that runs for whichever exams you're trying to use that platform for. And that default profile typically, as it's called, it locks down a bunch of processes. And so in our generic type of approach, in our generic setup, it will say something like, oh, you're running some processes that shouldn't be running, because it knows that it's running in a virtual session. So I've actually reached out to that vendor and asked them specifically how we can make this work. And they pretty much said, oh, well, all you have to do is just create a custom exam profile that excludes some of these processes that are running in a cloud platform like this. So once those are excluded, we can build a non-persistent type of environment where students click a single object in the App Store, and it takes them into that virtual machine where they have the lockdown browser. And then from there, they can perform that test. And then you'd be able to use the virtual classroom to, if you wanted to watch them take that exam as well. So yes.
Good question. Good question.
Yeah, I can't say I'm familiar to the Hawks. So I'm maybe, I don't know if Hawks is a specific school there, but. Okay, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to show that nested virtualization environment I was talking about earlier. Okay, textbook. Got it.
Textbook company. Okay. I'm sure there's something we can work through with them and create that profile so it can work in virtual environment.
Okay, yeah. So really quick, just that Cyberlab that I was talking about earlier. So we can kind of see that here. So here we have an interactive topology view of this environment. So students would be able to, go ahead and kind of manipulate these items or these objects. And this is a customized type of environment, so it could be set up to pretty much support any configuration. Right now, we've created our own kind of classes in this, so it's kind of a deep dive template into Network Plus or Security Plus. Those are really popular programs, so we've kind of created those two templates. But this could be fully customized to fit whatever type of need. And you could do something like this where you can, if you have a specific endpoint that you want to drag into this environment, it's actually just drag and drop. And then it's super easy to connect that to your environment. You just click that, select an Ethernet port, select the open Ethernet port there, and you're good to go. And now you've gone ahead and connected that to this network. It's very easy to spin up these containers as well, so you could just double click on those and that'll bring up that console. So really customizable type of environment. Computer science folks or IT folks can also use this type of environment for connecting or training their staff. So lots of different types of configured options there.
Yep, professors can come up with their own templates and share that with their students for their courses, and this is so much easier nowadays. I wish this was around when I was learning this.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, so we do have a lot of pre-configured type of labs and kind of assignments there as well. So fully customizable, pretty much any appliance is supported as well. So for anyone who's from the computer science background, yeah, pretty much can be supporting any network interface, any firewall, things like that.
And each student gets their own environment. So once, there's no interfering unless the faculty wants them to chat with other networks. But once they're done, they can just reset the whole thing and start all over. So no having to build these huge labs in-house anymore.
Okay, folks, if anyone else has any question, definitely be sure to go ahead and put that in the chat there. Otherwise, I want to bring up that one slide again, so you guys know that you can always reach out to us. I'll go ahead and kind of put that there. Yeah, so you can always contact us directly at success@apporto.com if you do want to set up some of these more detailed deep dives with your actual instance, or maybe if you want to have more of a larger group that we could do this type of presentation to, we'd be happy to do that. We did record this session, so I'll go ahead and once we wrap up here, we'll go ahead and get that recording out to all the attendees today as well. So you can always review that. And we do have some of these pre-recorded sessions already available on our YouTube as well. So you could always find that on our channel there. So I think if no one else has any other questions, I think we can go ahead and end the session. I'll stop the screen video recording now.